The earth does not belong to man. Man belongs to the earth. The Indian Chief Sitting Bull said these words here in the United States over a century ago. We didn't listen to him. The United States today is the country that has the biggest impact on the earth. But let's not just put the blame on just one country. All the industrialized countries of which we are one are to blame. We weigh too much for the earth. In 30 years, 30% of the planet's resources have disappeared. There are more and more of us, and we can do nothing about that. But if we want to be transported, heated, fed, to manage our waste, we have to enter into a new contract with nature. And that depends on every one of us.
Bonsoir.
The total opposite of the sans range. These are the feedlots. Intensive farming, American style. Even from the helicopter, the smell hits you a few kilometers away. 100,000 head of cattle to feed. The corn arrives from all over the United States. That's what gives the meat the sweetness and tenderness Americans love. But here's the hitch. To grow the corn and farm the cattle, you need at least 1 liter of oil and 15,000 liters of water to get 1 kilo of beef. These animals, made for grass, are force-fed corn, hormones and antibiotics. They're treated like meat factories. I hope this will never happen in France. In 50 years, meat consumption throughout the world has multiplied by 5. Farming has become one of the major producers of greenhouse gas emissions, ahead of transport. We eat too much meat, and we need to take a good look at our farming methods everywhere. Meat will cost more and more. Are we ready to accept this? Because with too many animals on the land, natural spaces deteriorate, as in China. Did you know that every year 10 million hectares of cultivated land turns into desert? We know about the incredible expansion of the Chinese economy, but did you know that its desert is advancing by 25 kilometers a year and is already on the threshold of Beijing? This is what we are going to see now.
The yellow dragon is on its way. This is the monster, a gigantic sandstorm sweeping through the Chinese countryside. Soon, this tidal wave will devour Beijing. The capital is used to living through these storms. In 1993, one of the most vicious storms killed 100 people and destroyed 50,000 homes. According to some experts, Beijing is under threat of becoming a desert 100 years from now. If you believe the inhabitants, 50 years ago there were 1 or 2 sandstorms a year. Now, broom sellers are doing good business. 30 or more sandstorms hit the village every spring. The weather forecast fuels the newspapers and the conversations of every family.
但是我感觉啊，就是说，因为我有一点那个过敏性的鼻炎，所以我每到这个季节的时候，尤其是有沙尘的时候，我会鼻子非常非常的不舒服。
人家电台上，这大伙传的，都是在内蒙古过来的。 那地儿那风特大。
Inner Mongolia, Most of the sandstorms are born here, in this apparently peaceful setting, the Alashan Plateau. The deserts are the source of the sandstorms. And in China, the desert is advancing considerably. Thousands of people have already been exiled. Jure Zhang and his wife used to live here just 3 years ago. Human activity is partly responsible for the advancing of the desert. The reason? Cattle. When there are too many animals, they finish off the already weakened ground by grazing on the vegetation that holds back the desert. Before, the villagers kept thousands of sheep here. Jure Zhang and his wife were forced to stop farming. Jure Zhang and his wife have lost more or less everything. They, like 20 million other people throughout the world, are ecological refugees. They had to exile themselves to another village half an hour away, protected from the wind by trees and where the water is not yet exhausted. To help their move, the Zhu family were given 300 euros by the authorities. 300 euros to protect the environment and rebuild a whole life. Perhaps one day the desert will catch up with them again. So Granny explains to her granddaughter that she too one day will probably have to move a bit further away to build a future away from these hostile lands. So China is at war with the deserts that are gnawing it away. But China is not admitting defeat. Look, they have built a great green wall, rows of trees over 5,000 kilometers to stop the sand advancing. A massive project started 30 years ago and which will last nearly a century. Like every other Chinese, Dalin must plant at least 5 trees a year. The plantations have even become his profession. He's a forestry engineer in the outer suburbs of Beijing.
为什么植树造林能够解决这个问题？植树造林以后，地表的植被得到地表覆盖以后，可以减少地表尘土的飞扬，也能够涵养水源，使地表的表土不能够轻易的移动。
According to estimates, nearly 30 million trees will have been planted in China over the last 20 years, a natural barrier which slows down the desert's advance. But it's not enough. Lack of water, poor soil. Over the years, only 25% of the trees planted will have survived. China, who always sees bigger, higher, stronger, has found an enemy its own size: the desert.
Look at that. We've come here to talk about metal resources. They're not endless either. The way they're extracted is impressive. This is the biggest mine in the world, the biggest copper mine in the world. In 100 years, the Bingham mine has dug more than 1,200 meters deep and is 4 kilometers in diameter. It can even be seen from space. Imagine, you could stack 4 Eiffel Towers inside it. It's like an enormous circus with terraces all around. But terraces made for giants. When you see how small the enormous trucks seem in comparison. "24 hours a day, the trucks go through the same valley. I'm staggered by the means employed here. Every day, 1 ton of explosive is used, and more than 4 million liters of water just to settle the dust down. In the end, 1 ton of ore produces only 6 kilograms of copper. That's not much. A 260-ton truck that can carry 320. The biggest truck in the world. The biggest copper mine in the world. The United States, where you can find the biggest of everything. I've come here to see Philippe Osset. His job is to try and think about how to optimize the manufacture of everyday objects. Because today, we are wasting all the resources the Earth has to offer. An example? My telephone. 1 billion mobile phones are brought out every year. To make this telephone, you need 30 different kinds of metal. To make this telephone, we are going to dig up hundreds of kilos of ore. Philippe, today we all overconsume. At the end of the day, we are wasting our capital instead of living on the interest. The trend is to throw it away. We don't repair things anymore.
Ça, c'est un vrai sujet. Effectivement, et notamment pour revenir au téléphone portable, ce qui fait que les gens vont le jeter, c'est souvent que la batterie tombe à plat, enfin tient plus du tout, donc ils se disent je vais changer de téléphone. Et là, c'est plutôt que changer de téléphone, peut-être acheter une nouvelle batterie, ce serait plus intéressant.
Maintenant, un mauvais exemple.
Peut-être l'exemple qui est le plus caractéristique va être toutes les mises en veille de ces appareils électroniques que l'on a à la maison. Ces mises en veille, quand on les somme au niveau français, on arrive à consommer une tranche de centrale nucléaire. Donc plutôt que construire une nouvelle tranche, on pourrait peut-être essayer de faire attention à réduire cette mise en veille.
You mean not using the remote control to turn off the machine, but pulling out the plug, turning off the switch?
Je dirais peut-être le meilleur conseil, c'est de débrancher l'appareil, mais c'est vrai que c'est pas très facile. Parce que si à la conception on ne prévoit pas une utilisation correcte pour les utilisateurs, on arrivera à un appareil en veille qu'on ne pourra pas éteindre.
As with energy, ore is not inexhaustible. We don't know if the metal reserves will be able to meet the demands of this century. And already prices are rocketing. 2 examples. In 5 years, the price of copper has increased 330%, and that of nickel by 200%. And yet, contrary to oil and coal, metals are recyclable. Could we not make the manufacturers repair the machines and, above all, recycle them?
Alors, ça, c'est un travail qui préoccupe énormément, je dirais, le législateur. Aujourd'hui, la Commission européenne travaille filière par filière à rendre les producteurs, je dirais, responsables du devenir de leurs produits. Certains le font déjà. Les fabricants de photocopieuses, par exemple, vont récupérer certains composants d'anciennes photocopieuses pour les mettre dans les nouvelles. Et je dirais, toute cette filière de réutilisation de composants est mise en place pour les photocopieurs.
Is it true that dismantling computers is dangerous to health, which is why all our old computers go to China, where the health and safety regulations are not the same?
Je vois surtout que là-bas, il y a un gros intérêt pour eux de récupérer tous ces produits à recycler, vu leur croissance, et donc ils passent sur nos marchés récupérer l'ensemble de nos déchets, parce que eux, ça les intéresse. Donc peut-être que dans ce sens-là, ils sont plus en avance que nous, et ils préfèrent utiliser des déchets que des ressources, et pour eux, ça coûte moins cher.
So we send them our TV sets and computers, and they send them back to us new. They're not stupid.
Ils viennent les chercher et ils nous les renvoient neufs.
Rather than endlessly taking, let us learn to reuse, to repair, to recycle.